I was soaring high above the rugged California coastal mountain ranges. In the distance to my left, I could see the cobalt waters of the Pacific. The mountains below were lush and green, except for the steepest slopes. These were brown, rocky, and menacing. The occasional creek cut between the ridges and small flows from the high-up places dumped into cold mountain creeks. California's Central Coast, a beautiful, one-of-a-kind place, I thought. No wonder so many people live in California. With its natural beauty, pleasant climate, and tales of gold, it's easy to see why California lured so many settlers away from the East Coast back in the 1800s. A tough and dangerous trip, but worth the risk. You can't find a place like this anywhere else. I tightened my grip and looked down at the farms and vineyards on the valley floors between the jagged mountain chains. I shivered in the cold breeze. The frigid air hit my face and worked its way through my collar and down the back of my neck. All I could think of is how much colder California is than I thought. I knew the high elevations would be cold, but hell, last month when I was staying on the outskirts of San Diego, the temperatures rarely hit the mid-60s. Frosty mornings, cold nights, and cool afternoons were not what I expected after hearing about warm and sunny California growing up. Don't get me wrong, it's a far cry from the winters west of the Blue Ridge back in Virginia. I just thought it would be warmer is all. I pictured myself in shorts and t-shirts all winter rather than long pants, a long-sleeve shirt, and a light jacket. I adjusted my grip and turned a bit. I must have pulled his feathers a little too hard. "You okay back there?" the gargantuan bird asked in the same accent as my family members back in southwestern Virginia. "Yeah, I'm all right, boss," I said. "Just readjusting. Somebody should have put a saddle on your big old ass." "You reckon they even make saddles that size?" "Doubt it. Can't see much market for it." "No money in it, I reckon." "You are one big bastard, ain't you?" "Shit, you think I'm big? You ought to see my cousins on my mom's side. You want to talk about big?" As weird and stupid as it sounds, I was dreaming I was flying on the back of a giant California condor. And I mean a giant. Condors are big anyway, with wingspans reaching 10 feet. But this son of a bitch was 3 or 4 times that size. Hell, maybe bigger. But here's where it gets really bizarre. Somewhere during my conversation with the big bird, I realized I was dreaming. And then I took over. The nonsensical conversation stopped. I turned the bird and nudged him to dive. Now we were soaring above Pinnacles National Park. I could make out the trails and the handholds driven into the sheer rock faces I'd climbed earlier that day. We flew around Pinnacles and then south to the Laguna Mountain Recreation Area, a large area of rugged terrain administered by the Bureau of Land Management. I saw several hikers heading up into the mountains on narrow trails. I also watched scores of ATVs race along the primitive dirt roads, rooster tails of red dust behind them. From here, my avian companion and I made a sharp turn toward the coast. We glided high above Highway 1, the renowned Pacific Coast Highway, and somewhere around Big Sur, as I peered down into the redwood forests, I started to lose focus. My mind drifted for a moment, and just like that, I lost control of the dream. All of a sudden, I was thrust into a meaningless, confusing, and chaotic burst of images. Stupid dreams that I don't remember. Vivid yet absurd. Then I woke up. As of this writing, that night I rode the giant condor around Central California was the third to last time I had a lucid dream. Well, actually, that's not true. I have lucid dreams fairly regularly, but more often than not, I'd say 90% of the time, I don't take control of the dream. I'm not sure why. I suppose it scares me. More on that later. According to the National Institutes of Health, lucid dreaming refers to the phenomenon of becoming aware of the fact that one is dreaming during ongoing sleep. Wikipedia says, during a lucid dream, the dreamer may gain some amount of volitional control over the dream characters, narrative, or environment, although this control of dream content is not the salient feature of lucid dreaming. An important distinction is that lucid dreaming is a distinct type of dream from other types of dreams, such as pre-lucid dreams and vivid dreams. Although pre-lucid dreams are a precursor to lucid dreams, and lucid dreams are often accompanied with enhanced dream vividness. Lucid dreams are also distinct state from other lucid boundary sleep states, such as lucid hypnagogia or lucid hypnopompia. According to medical journals and websites, prestigious universities, and more, lucid dreaming is something one can learn through practice if shown the proper techniques to awaken the mind to its own consciousness. Supposedly, there are therapeutic benefits to lucid dreaming. It can treat PTSD and help those suffering from various phobias by incrementally exposing them to their fears while in a dream state. As the theory goes, through lucid dreams, the sufferer can confront and take control of his or her fears, or in the case of PTSD, incrementally relive traumatic events and take control of those. Lucid dreaming, I'm not really sure how it works. I just know that a lot of the time I'm asleep, I know I'm dreaming. And once in a while, I fly around on a 40-foot condor. I've talked a little on a couple of podcasts about lucid dreams. The question often comes up, do you practice it? Do you try to have lucid dreams? No, I do not. You might wonder why. Well, it's like this. Even the smartest medical minds do not fully understand dreams, let alone lucid dreams. So to me, trying to do it might be a little risky. I think doing it too often could possibly blur the lines of what is real and what is make-believe, especially when taking control of dreams that take place in an everyday life setting. But there is a bigger reason I don't try to lucid dream, something more spiritual. What happens during these experiences? And during this in and out state, something straddling the real and imaginary, where does my consciousness or my soul go to? Could it get stuck, so to speak, somewhere else? I am not a conservative Christian, but teachings in my childhood and early adulthood are ingrained in me. Could I be opening myself up to something evil? Demons, perhaps? Whatever you want to call them, demons or something else, I think they're malevolent entities in an unseen realm. Now, whether or not one is more vulnerable to their influences in these dreamlike states, I do not know. But my gut tells me to not mess around and find out. All this talk about lucid dreaming brings up something I think about often. What if we are actually living in a dreamlike state? There is a lot of talk about that sort of thing these days. Folks come at it from a variety of angles. We are living in a simulation akin to a video game. According to proponents of the law of attraction, we create and manifest our future and our day-to-day existence with our thoughts. And from time immemorial, philosophers have pondered the idea that the world we live in is an illusion. We are living in our own dream. There are many similar theories and offshoots of these ideas, but essentially they are the same. What we see and the things we experience are an illusion. Whether or not that illusion is something we create or something generated by an elaborate computer program or some other creative intelligence is not important for the purposes of this conversation. All we need to do is realize we are in a dream. Then we need to take control of it. In the same way, it is possible in a lucid dream to take control and consciously affect our experiences and the outcomes of those dreams. We can do the same in the illusion, the dreamlike state. That is our lives. By setting our intentions and focusing our thoughts, we can steer our lives in the direction we want to go. We are not helpless and do not need to be adrift, living meaningless lives we did not choose. The choice is ours. But first, we must realize we are in a dream. Then we have to take control. Taking control, the same way we are able to take control in a lucid dream, is our key to worthwhile lives, even if we are inside a simulation. Think of it as a cheat code in a video game. We don't have to stay stuck in a monotonous existence somewhere between levels 2 and 3. But we have to realize we're in a dream, or an illusion, or simulation. Then we have to take control. If you're one of my regular readers, you probably didn't buy this book to listen to me ramble on about video game cheat codes, lucid dreams, and the law of attraction. More likely than not, you're here to read another one of my wackadoo theories to try and make sense of cryptid sightings. Good news, then. I have another one. One that ties into my ridiculous dream of flying on the back of a giant condor. Here it is. I think some so-called Thunderbird sightings are caused by California condors. For our conversations in this book, I'm going to refer to Thunderbirds as birds. Enormous birds with black feathers. In a lot of your Thunderbird sightings and lore, what could only be described as pterosaurs gets mixed in. According to eyewitnesses, both have wingspans reaching up to 30 feet. However, the pterosaur-like version has leathery wings, a tail with a diamond shape on the end, and sometimes, when spotted at night, they emit a greenish, bioluminescent glow. The other version are simply big birds with black feathers, a collar of white plumage, and a red or orange head. These birds dwarf the largest of the known birds flying our skies. Many think, me included, that Thunderbirds are probably teratorns. Teratorns comprise a supposedly extinct family of enormous birds. The word teratorn means wonder bird, a fitting description of the gargantuan birds. Even the smaller teratorn species stood at about 30 inches, weighed over 30 pounds, and their wingspans reached 12 feet. Fossils in Argentina have been found of a teratorn species named Argentavis magnificens. This behemoth weighed about 150 pounds, stood over 5 feet tall, and had a wingspan exceeding 20 feet. In fact, some estimates put the creature's wingspan at 26 feet. According to conventional thought, teratorns died out at the close of the last ice age. The widespread extinction of Ice Age megafauna took a devastating toll on the supply of carrion for teratorns. But what if a remnant population of teratorns survived into the present day? I believe some did. And up until recently, I thought this explained the phenomenon pretty well. But when I visited Pinnacles National Park for the first time in February 2023, I began to reevaluate my position. Seeing a condor soar above your head will do that. You'll rethink a lot of the things you thought you knew. California condors are the largest birds in North America. The enormous scavengers stand at around 3.5 feet tall and have wingspans reaching 10 feet. Compare that to the biggest hunting bird in North America, the golden eagle, which has a wingspan of around 7 feet. I've seen golden eagles many times, and condors dwarf them. As of this writing, I am 52 years old. When I hear or read the word condor, my mind goes back to the evening news broadcasts of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Back then, condors were on the fast track to extinction. Only a handful of the massive birds were still alive, and wildlife officials in California were doing everything in their power to keep them from slipping into a final elimination. Their efforts included capturing the remaining condors, breeding them, tagging their offspring, and releasing them into the wild. According to Wikipedia, as the condor's population continued to decline, discussion began about starting a captive breeding program for the birds. Opponents to this plan argued that the condors had the right to freedom and that capturing all of the condors would change the species' habits forever, and that the cost was too great. The project received the approval of the United States government, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service established the California Condor Recovery Program in 1979. The capture of the remaining wild condors was completed on Easter Sunday, 1987, when AC-9, the last wild condor, was captured. At that point, there were only 22 surviving condors, all of them in captivity. The goal of the California Condor Recovery Plan was to establish two geographically separate populations, one in California and the other in Arizona, each with 150 birds and at least 15 breeding pairs. Even as a kid in elementary school, I doubted the things I was seeing on the news. Sure, I trusted Tom Brokaw, and especially John Chancellor, to a point, but the reporters and the experts they interviewed way out in California, which might as well have been in some far-off country as far as I was concerned, seemed off to me. I kept hearing them say how many condors were left. They also said they knew who they were and that they had tagged them. Even as a kid, that reeked of bullshit. Back then, I wondered, and I wonder even more so today, how exactly something like that can even be known. I don't care how educated you are, your years of field research, though impressive, does not matter. There is simply no way to know when the last of its species dies, or before that happens, how many are left. I'm sorry, but I don't think that is knowable. Even as a 10-year-old boy, long before Eric von Daniken, Alex Jones, Zechariah Sitchin, John Keel, young Earth creationist arguments, the JFK assassination, TWA 800, Building 7, weather modification, the New Coke conspiracy, black helicopters, and more got a hold of me, I thought it was complete and utter bullshit that grown adults would sit and listen to the news, accepting as fact something that is unknowable. As the years went by, I thought more on these old newscasts and began to ask other questions. My biggest question was, how can you know how many individuals are left among an endangered species population? And since, to me, that is unknowable, how can you be certain that you've tagged and re-released the remnant condor population? I thought back then, and even more so today, that there had to have been at least a few condors that evaded the do-gooders. I felt there had to be a remnant that escaped capture. These wily condors did not get tagged for their own good and the good of their species. In fact, I asked myself why there couldn't have been a small breeding population, if not several small breeding populations, still carrying on with their natural lives outside the reach of the altruistic folks determined to see California condors make a comeback. That brings me to my next point. Since recovery efforts began, there is no way to know how many condors have slipped through the cracks. The National Park Service said the following about untagged condors. When condors hatch in the wild, biologists try to enter the nests and tag the young birds at about 4 months old. However, some nests are too dangerous or inaccessible to enter, so the chicks fledge, learn to fly, at about 6 months old with no wing tags. When that happens, biologists have to wait until the untagged condor comes to one of the trapping sites so it can get a wing tag and transmitter before getting released again. After these untagged condors are caught, biologists send a blood sample out for DNA testing to confirm who the bird is. Instead of being held in captivity for weeks while we confirm their identity, these condors are released with temporary green tags and then recaptured later so they can receive the correct tag. There is no way to convince me there aren't adult condors without tags that are out there breeding. A lot of them? Probably not, but there has to be some. The point of all this simply to ask if perhaps condors are a better explanation for thunderbird sightings than teratorns. After all, we know for a fact that condors still exist. Of course, eyewitnesses that describe seeing birds with 20-foot wingspans would be mistaken their size by double, but that is understandable. Oftentimes, witnesses are off, sometimes way off, with their size and distance estimates. Condors have a historical range that stretched from California to Florida and western Canada to northern Mexico. Today, condors are found in the redwood forests of Northern California, the mountains of Southern California. In Central California, Big Sur and Pinnacles National Park hold populations. Arizona has condors in the Grand Canyon and Vermilion Cliffs National Monument. And southern Utah's Canyon Country and Mexico's Baja Peninsula also hold condor populations. But could their range have spread further than we know, especially among those untagged birds I mentioned? And maybe there were some unaccounted for condors outside of California back in the 1970s and 1980s before the recovery program got underway. Who is to say? We can't know when the last animal of its kind dies, nor can we say there are 10 left in the wild, or 4, or 120. We can think that, maybe even get pretty close with an educated guess backed by tireless field work. But we can never really know when a species has gone extinct. Think about it. The last critically endangered species does not find an expert to check in with before it dies. Despite their best efforts, scientists cannot comb every square inch of land and water to determine if in fact the last of its kind has passed away. That is why condors, even far outside their range, are a good explanation for some of the thunderbird sightings out there. It is also why there might still be a small teratorn population stubbornly hanging on despite the fact that we know they went extinct at the close of the last ice age.